The front door had barely clicked shut when my 8-year-old niece turned away from the window and spoke. It was not a strained sound or a broken syllable. It was a complete sentence, clear enough to stop my heart. "Auntie Natalie, don't drink the tea Mom made." For 8 years, everyone had been told Emma was born mute. My sister had built fundraisers, interviews, and an enormous online following around raising a child who would never have a voice. Yet Emma was standing in my hallway, whispering like someone who had spent years practicing in secret. "What did you say?" I asked. Her eyes dropped to the glass pitcher Vanessa had placed in my refrigerator before leaving for the cruise terminal. "Dad said the ship cameras would prove they were far away when your heart stopped. Mom said I had to wait before pressing the emergency button." My fingers went cold against the kitchen counter. I had a harmless heart rhythm condition. Vanessa knew that. She had also insisted that I drink her new herbal blend before bed. My phone buzzed. A message from my sister appeared on the screen. "Have you finished the first cup yet?" I looked at Emma. She was trembling so hard that her teeth clicked, but she forced out one more sentence. "They left me here because they think a girl who cannot speak can never be a witness." That was when I understood the cruise was not a vacation. The tea was not a gift. And my niece had not been silent because she lacked a voice. She had been silent because the two people who were supposed to protect her were terrified of what she might say. Stay with me to discover what Emma had been forced to hide, and subscribe to the channel so you do not miss what happened when her parents realized their silent witness had finally spoken. 3 hours earlier, I had been standing in my driveway, watching Vanessa direct Mark as if they were unloading equipment for a production instead of dropping off one child. He removed 2 suitcases, a backpack, a white case containing Emma's communication device, and a tote filled with snacks, medication, chargers, and printed schedules. Emma stepped out last. She wore a pale blue sweater despite the warm afternoon and held both backpack straps against her chest. When I opened my arms, she gave me a small wave instead of a hug. I tried not to take it personally. Vanessa had spent years telling me that Emma disliked unexpected touch and people who asked too many questions. Whenever I suggested another specialist, or wondered whether Emma understood more than they believed, my sister accused me of refusing to accept her disability. "I put everything in order," Vanessa said as she carried a glass pitcher into my kitchen. "Meals, bedtime, approved videos, bathroom reminders. Please do not improvise. I have looked after children before. Not Emma." The correction came with the pleasant smile Vanessa used in interviews when she described motherhood as a responsibility no outsider could understand. Mark placed the communication device on my table and tapped the screen. Picture symbols appeared beside prepared phrases. "She uses this when she needs something specific," he said. "Do not change the settings. If it freezes, call me before touching anything." He sounded less like a father explaining his daughter's needs, and more like a technician protecting a machine. Vanessa opened my refrigerator and placed the pitcher on the center shelf. The liquid was amber, with lemon slices and dark leaves floating near the bottom. "This is for you," she said. "You told me your heart had been fluttering again, and you barely sleep when you are editing those audiobooks. 1 cup tonight will calm everything down. My doctor said it was harmless unless it lasted longer. That does not mean you should ignore it." She squeezed my wrist. "Promise me you will drink it." Before I could answer, I noticed Emma staring at the pitcher. Her face had lost what little color it had. I assumed she was anxious because her parents had never left her with me overnight. Mark walked through my living room while pretending to admire the renovations. He looked at the smart speaker, the motion sensor near the stairs, and the camera facing the front porch. "Does that record continuously?" "Only when someone approaches." "What about inside?" "I do not keep cameras inside my house." He glanced toward the hallway and windows. "Any neighbors who stop by without calling?" "No." "And you are working from home all week?" I nodded. He also asked when my grocery delivery came, whether the back door alarm worked, and how far away the nearest neighbor lived. Each question sounded reasonable alone. Together, they made me feel as though he were mapping my house. Before leaving, Vanessa crouched in front of Emma. My sister touched 2 fingers to her chin, pointed toward the communication device, then tapped her watch twice. Emma went rigid. I had seen Vanessa use signs with her daughter for years, but that sequence was unfamiliar. What does that mean? Vanessa stood. Follow the plan. New places make her forget routines. She kissed Emma's forehead. Mark only checked that the device was inside its case, then told me to keep my phone nearby. Vanessa reminded me about the tea, once more, before getting into the car. Emma remained at the window as they drove away, her fingers pressed against the glass. Then the door shut, and she spoke. After her warning, I had to grip the counter to keep my knees from giving way. My first instinct was to call Vanessa and demand an explanation. I reached for my phone, but Emma grabbed my wrist with both hands. "No," she whispered. "Please do not tell her I talked." The terror in her face stopped me. She was listening for the car as though her parents might turn around and punish her before reaching the highway. I lowered myself to the floor, so we were at the same height. "Emma, I need to know whether you understand what you told me. What is my name?" "Natalie." "Where are your parents going?" "The cruise ship." "How long are you staying here?" She swallowed. 7 sleeps. "Did someone teach you only those sentences?" Her eyes filled with tears. "I know other words." "What did you eat for breakfast?" "Toast with no crust." Dad was angry because Mom filmed it twice. The answer was too specific and immediate to have been memorized for me. Her voice was quiet and unusually even, like the narration in the children's books I edited, but she understood every question. I glanced at the refrigerator. "What did they tell you would happen tonight?" Emma pressed her lips together. Then she pointed to the white case on the table. I brought it to her. She unlocked the device with a pattern Mark had not shown me and opened a folder labeled Home Visit. Inside were prepared sentences arranged in order. Aunt Natalie drank the tea. She said she felt tired. She fell asleep on the couch. I tried to wake her. I wanted to call, but I was scared. My stomach tightened with every line. "Were you supposed to show these to the police?" Emma nodded. "Did your parents make this folder?" Another nod. My phone buzzed again. Vanessa had not asked whether Emma was crying, hungry, or frightened. She asked only whether I had tried the tea. I typed that we were unpacking, and I would drink it later. Then I placed the phone face down. I moved the pitcher to the back of the refrigerator without touching the liquid. I locked both doors and turned off the smart speaker. My recording room was the only space without a connected television, voice assistant, or security sensor, so I took Emma there. "You do not have to tell me everything tonight," I said. "You do not have to speak until you feel safe. But I believe you are frightened, and I will not make you drink, say, or perform anything for me." Emma studied my face, as though searching for the hidden condition in my promise. Then she touched the device and scrolled to the final sentence. "Wait 1 hour before calling for help." Before I could ask why, my phone lit up again. "Make sure Emma follows the story." I read Vanessa's message 3 times before showing it to Emma. Her face changed the moment she saw the words. She pulled her knees to her chest on the recording room sofa and stared at the communication device as though it had become something alive. "What story?" I asked. Her fingers moved toward the screen, then stopped. She looked at the closed door even though I had already locked the house. I sat beside her but left enough space that she would not feel trapped. "Before you tell me anything else, we need rules. No one is going to force you to speak. You can write, point, type, or stay quiet. I will only share what you tell me with people who need to help keep you safe. If you want me to stop asking questions, I will stop." Emma watched me for a long moment. Then she whispered, "Mom says adults promise things when they want children to cooperate." "She is right that some adults do that," I said. "So do not trust my promise yet. Watch what I do." Her breathing slowed, but she kept one hand on the device. "How long have you been able to speak?" "Since I was 4. 4 years. Half her life had been spent pretending she had no voice." Emma had been slow to speak as a toddler. She understood instructions, recognized letters, and made sounds, but full sentences came later than Vanessa expected. During that period, my sister posted a video of Emma sitting silently beside her while Vanessa cried into the camera. Emma remembered the title, because it still appeared on the family channel. The child who may never call me mom. The video spread far beyond their usual audience. Donations arrived. A speech device company offered free equipment. Then came sponsors, interviews, and invitations for Vanessa to speak about raising a child without a voice. At first, I believed the attention helped. I sent money for therapy and bought audiobooks because Emma loved looking at the pictures while the narrator read. Whenever I asked what doctors expected, Vanessa answered with phrases like permanent uncertainty and profound communication disorder. She never sent reports, but I assumed she was protecting Emma's privacy. Everything changed. Shortly after Emma's 4th birthday, she had been sitting on the kitchen floor with a picture book when she looked up at Vanessa and said, "The rabbit is under the chair." Vanessa cried and hugged her. For several days, she encouraged Emma to repeat words. Mark recorded some of them. Then he checked the channel numbers. A sponsored campaign had performed poorly after Vanessa mentioned that Emma was making progress. Comments accused the family of exaggerating her condition. A company delayed a contract until it received updated medical information. Donations dropped. Dad said people did not pay for Almost Better, Emma told me. He said they paid because I was special. The following week, Vanessa filmed Emma trying to say the word mother. Emma said it correctly several times, but Mark kept restarting the camera. He told her to make no sound. Vanessa held her face, looked into the lens, and cried when Emma
with the
remained
Collins
silent.
family's payment for the
final
catering.
video was
Apparently,
titled
their check was
Another
sent to the wrong
Birthday
vendor.
Without Hearing
We're
Her
trying to
Voice.
keep things on schedule.
I had watched it.
And Rachel's
I
on
had
the verge
cried
of
and
tears.
sent Vanessa
Ethan had
$500
paused.
for a therapy program.
Why didn't they
that,
just reissue
according
the
to
check?
Emma,
They're
never
traveling.
existed.
It's
My
complicated.
shame must have shown
Look,
because she
we'll make
touched
sure
my
they
sleeve.
reimburse you. It's
You
just
did
a
not
timing
know.
thing.
No,
We can't
but
let
I
this
should have
derail
asked more
everything.
questions.
Not
Emma shook
after
her
how
head.
much you've already contributed.
Mom said you asked too
He had
many.
wired the money
At
that
first,
same night.
silence
What
was
Marilyn
presented
didn't
as a game. Vanessa told her they were making special videos and that Emma had to stay quiet until filming ended. Mark rewarded her with stickers. When she spoke in front of a sponsor, their kindness disappeared. They told her the family might lose the house because she had ruined a contract. They said people online would hate her for lying. They warned that social workers might separate her from her parents if anyone discovered the truth. When fear was not enough, they took away the
my
things
mom
she
texted
loved.
me.
No
Smug as ever.
bedtime stories,
No punctuation.
no headphones,
Just her signature
no
dashed like a
visits with
slap in
other
the face,
children.
wrapped in formal
Sometimes
tone.
they
I
placed her in
didn't
the small
reply.
soundproof
I logged
booth in
into
their
my
basement
account,
and left the
transferred
ceiling
the
light on for hours.
$6,500
They called it the
honeymoon
quiet
fund
room,
back to myself,
Emma said.
and canceled the
Dad
business
said I
class
could come
flights I
out
booked under
when I
her
remembered
name.
who I was.
No shouting,
Her
no
hands
drama.
started shaking.
Just a quiet
So
little
I kept
click.
my promise
By
and stopped
morning,
asking.
I had 23
I
missed
brought her a
calls.
sealed bottle of water
But only
and
one
found one of the old audiobooks I had narrated before moving into editing full-time. The cover showed a girl following a silver fox through a winter forest. Emma's eyes widened. "You know this one? I know all of yours." That explained the rhythm in her speech. She paused where I paused and softened the ends of sentences the way I did when reading to children. My voice had reached her through headphones after her own parents tried to erase hers. Vanessa allowed the audiobooks because they kept Emma occupied. At night, Emma played short lines, stopped the recording, and copied each word into a pillow so no one would hear. When her parents traveled for speaking events, she practiced in the basement booth with the microphone disconnected. For years, I had thought the books were useless gifts. Now I understood they had given her a private place where words still belonged to her. "Why did you speak today?" I asked. "Because Mom said this was the last problem." Emma opened a calendar on the device. The following Tuesday had been marked with a blue star. Beneath it were the words, "Independent Assessment." A documentary company had offered Vanessa and Mark a large contract for a series about Emma's life. Before production began, an outside specialist would evaluate Emma without her parents in the room. The company wanted confirmation that the family's claims were accurate. Vanessa had delayed the appointment twice. The third delay had been refused. I remembered her complaining that producers were treating her like a criminal. I said another opinion might help Emma. Vanessa accused me of caring more about being right than supporting her family. Around the same time, I found an old video while transferring files from my mother's computer. Emma was 4, sitting beneath a table during a holiday dinner. Someone asked where her toy horse was, and a small voice answered, "It is sleeping in my bag." I sent the clip to Vanessa. She claimed it was another child off camera. When I said I wanted a specialist to review it, she stopped speaking to me for 3 weeks. I had not told her that I made an appointment. I placed it on my private calendar and planned to take the video to a developmental clinic after the cruise. Emma pointed at my laptop. "Mom saw it." "When?" "Last Sunday. You were making coffee. Dad told her to check your calendar." I remembered Vanessa standing near my desk while Mark asked questions about my heart medication. What had seemed like nosiness now had a purpose. They knew about my appointment. They knew the documentary assessment was days away. If either specialist heard Emma speak, the story they had sold for 4 years would collapse. The sponsors would leave. The contract would disappear. Every donation and emotional video would be examined. The world would learn they had not protected a voiceless child. They had forced a speaking child to perform silence. My death would stop me from reaching the clinic. It would create a family tragedy large enough to delay the assessment. Emma would return home frightened, controlled, and blamed for what happened in my house. Then I understood the most calculated part of their plan. They had not left Emma with me in spite of the danger. They had left her because they needed her there. She was supposed to be the grieving child beside my body, the silent witness who could repeat only the sentences placed inside her device. I looked at the picture hidden behind the milk, then at Vanessa's message. "Make sure Emma follows the story." Emma was waiting to see whether I would panic, call Vanessa, or promise that everything would be fine. I did none of those things. I opened my contacts and searched for the emergency number I should have called the moment she spoke. Before I pressed it, Emma caught my hand. "If they take Mom and Dad away," she whispered, "will they take my voice away too?" "No," I said. "This time, the people who hear you are going to protect it." I called emergency services and told the dispatcher that an 8-year-old child had warned me about a possible poisoning. I explained that no one had consumed the tea, that the people who prepared it were currently traveling to a cruise ship, and that the child believed they expected me to die before they returned. The dispatcher told me not to touch the pitcher, the communication device, or anything Vanessa and Mark had brought into the house. She asked whether Emma and I could wait in a room away from the kitchen until officers arrived. I took Emma back into the recording room. She sat beside me with the communication device pressed against her stomach, while I kept the dispatcher on speaker. Every few seconds, Emma looked toward the door. "They cannot hear us from the ship, can they?" she asked. "Not from here. Dad checks things." "What things?" "The house things." I remembered Mark asking about the smart speaker, the porch camera, and the motion sensors. I had already unplugged the speaker, but I did not know whether they had placed something else inside the house. I told the dispatcher there might be monitoring equipment. She asked us to leave through the side door and wait in my detached garage. I took only my phone and the device Emma had already been holding. We did not touch the bags, food, or medicine her parents had left behind. 2 patrol cars arrived without sirens. A female officer entered the garage first and introduced herself as Officer Grace Moreno. She spoke directly to Emma without moving too close. "You do not have to answer me out loud," she said. "You can use your screen, write something down, or ask your aunt to sit beside you." Emma glanced at me, then selected a prepared phrase from the main menu. "I am scared." Officer Moreno nodded. "That makes sense. We are going to take this slowly." A second officer entered the house while Grace stayed with us. She asked me to explain everything from the moment Vanessa arrived. I described the picture, Mark's questions, the strange sign Vanessa gave Emma before leaving, and the folder containing the story Emma had been ordered to repeat. Grace did not interrupt. She wrote down every detail, then asked Emma whether the folder had been on the device before she arrived at my house. Emma typed her answer. "Dad made it yesterday. Did you watch him make it?" Emma nodded. "Did he tell you when to use it?" She typed again. After Auntie stopped moving, Grace's expression remained calm, but her pen stopped for a moment. She photographed the screen without changing anything on the device. Then she asked whether Emma knew what was inside the tea. "No," Emma whispered. It was the first word she had spoken in front of another adult. Her hands immediately covered her mouth. Grace did not react with surprise. She simply said, "Thank you for telling me." That small response seemed to matter. Emma lowered her hands and looked at her. A child protection investigator and 2 evidence technicians arrived within the next hour. They sealed the kitchen, photographed the refrigerator, and removed the pitcher in a rigid container. They also collected the printed schedule, the snacks, the medication, and every sealed bottle Vanessa had brought. One technician found a small camera inside the smoke detector near the living room entrance. It was angled toward the sofa and the path between the kitchen and hallway. Mark had asked whether I kept cameras inside my house because he already knew there was one. The device was transmitting through a separate wireless connection. It had not been added to my home network, which meant unplugging the router would not have stopped it. Someone could have watched the room without appearing on any of my accounts. The technician removed it without turning it off. The investigator said they would trace the account receiving the feed. Emma stared at the smoke detector as it was taken down. "Dad said he needed to see if I followed the steps," she whispered. I felt anger rise so quickly that it frightened me. They had intended to watch their
Phone
daughter
lit up
sit
again.
beside my body.
A message.
They wanted proof
Annabelle
that
This
she
time,
waited.
it wasn't from
Proof
Meryl.
that no one entered the
It
house.
wasn't from
and
Rachel.
proof that their plan
It
had
wasn't even
worked.
from one of the
Grace
cousins,
must have seen
who
the
likely
change
had
in
no
my
idea
face.
what had just
Stay with
happened.
Emma.
It was
she
from
said
his
quietly.
father, Thomas
We will
Miller.
deal with the evidence.
You around?
A
I
paramedic
think you should
checked
say
my blood
something.
pressure and
Just
heart
that.
rate.
7
The reading
words.
showed the same
No
irregular
drama,
pattern my
no
doctor had
emotion.
documented several
Just a
times
quiet
over the
flag in the
previous
wind,
months.
signaling
not
that whatever
immediately
Ethan had
dangerous,
assumed about the
but because
boundaries
the
of this
threat
family
involved
fracture.
something intended to affect my heart, the investigator wanted me examined at the hospital. Emma refused to stay behind. "I go with Auntie Natalie." The words came out more firmly than anything she had said since her parents left. Grace arranged for a child advocate to accompany us. Emma sat close enough that our shoulders touched during the drive. She did not speak again, but she held my hand every time the ambulance changed lanes. At the hospital, a doctor ordered blood and urine tests. I told her about my heart rhythm condition, the dizzy spells, and the periods of nausea that had appeared without explanation. She asked when the symptoms began. I opened my calendar and searched backward. The first serious episode occurred 4 months earlier, the morning after Vanessa brought me a homemade sleep tonic. The second happened after a family dinner, when she insisted I try a new herbal supplement. The third followed a weekend, when she stayed at my house and prepared tea every night. I had blamed stress, poor sleep, and too much coffee. My doctor had recommended monitoring because each episode disappeared before I could be examined. Vanessa had always called the next morning. I thought she was checking on me. Now I wondered whether she was checking whether I was still alive. The doctor asked whether I had any of the previous supplements at home. I remembered throwing most of them away after they made my stomach hurt, but one unopened bottle remained in the cabinet above my washing machine. Grace sent an officer to retrieve it. While we waited, Emma sat in a hospital chair coloring circles on a blank page. Every circle was drawn inside another circle, until the paper looked like a tunnel. "Did your mother ever tell you why she gave me those drinks?" I asked. Emma did not look up. "She said your heart needed practice." "What does that mean?" I asked Dad. He said little amounts teach the body what to do when the big amount comes. I had to turn away before she saw my expression. Mark had not invented that explanation for a child unless he had been thinking about repeated doses. The tea in my refrigerator was not the beginning of their plan. It was the final stage. My phone had been placed in an evidence bag, but Grace could still see incoming notifications through the screen. Vanessa had sent 6 messages. "Did you drink it yet? Do not forget before dinner. It works best if you have not eaten. Please answer me. Is Emma following her schedule? Natalie, call me now." Grace photographed each message. She advised me not to respond until the investigators decided how to proceed. Less than an hour later, Vanessa tried video calling through Emma's device. The screen showed my sister's smiling profile picture beside the words, "Incoming family check-in." Emma recoiled so hard that the coloring book fell from her lap. I declined the call. A message appeared almost immediately. "Turn on the camera. We need to see Emma." Grace took the device and placed it beside my phone. They do not get access to her right now. Emma looked at Grace as though she had never heard an adult refuse her parents before. The officer returned with the unopened supplement bottle from my house. Its label listed common herbs and vitamins. The seal looked intact, but the hospital laboratory agreed to examine it alongside my blood samples. We were moved into a private room where Emma could rest. The child advocate brought her a blanket and a pair of headphones. Emma chose one of my audiobooks but kept the volume low enough to hear the door. Near midnight, the doctor returned with a toxicologist on a video screen. She closed the door before speaking. The tea contained a substance that should not have been there. In a concentrated amount, it could cause a severe disruption of heart rhythm, especially in someone with an existing condition like mine. The hospital was running further tests before issuing a final report, but the initial result was serious enough for the police to treat the pitcher as part of an attempted poisoning. I asked whether 1 cup could have killed me. The doctor did not answer immediately. With the concentration we found, and the condition in your medical file, it could have caused a fatal event that appeared consistent with sudden cardiac failure. Emma was sitting in the corner with her headphones on. I hoped she had not heard. Then, the doctor placed another report on the table. The substance in the pitcher is also present in your blood. That is impossible. I never drank the tea. We know, she said. The amount in your blood is much lower. It did not come from tonight. My skin went cold. How long has it been there? We cannot give an exact timeline yet, but this does not look like a single recent exposure. I thought of every tonic, every vitamin, every bowl of soup Vanessa had delivered while telling me I worked too hard and needed someone to take care of me. The final dose was waiting in my refrigerator, but the attempt to kill me had begun months before Emma ever walked through my door. Grace stepped into the hallway to call the lead investigator. As the door opened, Emma removed her headphones. I told you Mom had practiced, she said. I looked at her. Practiced what? Emma placed the coloring book on my bed and turned to the last page. Beneath the circles, she had written one sentence in careful block letters. She tried the tea on someone else first. I read the sentence twice before asking Emma who she meant. She kept her eyes on the hospital blanket and rubbed one thumb across the edge of the communication device. A lady named Miss Lila, she said. The name was familiar, but I could not immediately remember why. Then I pictured a photograph Vanessa had posted nearly 2 years earlier. A young woman with curly brown hair was kneeling beside Emma at a small table. Vanessa had described her as a private communication specialist who volunteered to help children with severe disabilities. The woman disappeared from their videos after only a few weeks. Vanessa said she had moved to another state. What happened to Miss Lila? Emma looked toward the hospital door before answering. She heard me sing. According to Emma, Lila Morgan had been hired to help organize the communication device before a major sponsorship campaign. Unlike the other specialists Vanessa allowed near her daughter, Lila sometimes worked with Emma while Mark and Vanessa were filming in another room. One afternoon, Lila heard Emma quietly repeating a song from one of my audiobooks. She did not accuse Emma of lying or immediately call her parents. She closed the door, sat on the floor, and asked whether Emma wanted to talk. Emma told her that speaking was forbidden. Lila promised she would find a safe way to help. She said she needed to document what she had heard and speak with someone outside the family. That evening, Vanessa invited Lila to stay for dinner. She made the same tea, Emma said. Not as dark as yours. Lila became dizzy before dessert. Mark drove her home rather than calling an ambulance. The next morning, Vanessa told Emma that Lila had suffered an allergic reaction and would not return. Several days later, Emma heard her parents arguing. Mark complained that they had used too much because Lila had been taken to the emergency room by a neighbor. Vanessa said the woman had no proof and would keep quiet. Once they reminded her how much trouble she could face for violating the family's privacy agreement. Did Miss Lila die? I asked. Emma shook her head. Mom said she signed something. Grace returned to the room while Emma was speaking. I repeated the name and explained why I recognized it. Grace immediately contacted the lead investigator and asked someone to search for Lila Morgan. The child advocate reminded us that Emma's account needed to be collected through a proper forensic interview. Repeating the same questions could confuse a frightened child or allow Vanessa's attorneys to claim that I had influenced her answers. I stopped questioning Emma. Grace arranged for a trained interviewer to meet us the following morning at a child advocacy center connected to the hospital. Until then, Emma and I were placed in a secured family room. An officer remained outside. I was not permitted to answer Vanessa's messages, but investigators monitored each one. My sister's tone had changed. Her first messages had sounded concerned. The later ones became demanding. "Why are the police at your house? Where did you take Emma? You have no authority to let strangers question my child. Natalie, your heart condition is affecting your judgment." Then came the message that revealed she already had a story prepared. "Mark and I are contacting an attorney. You cannot use our disabled daughter to feed your obsession with proving us wrong." Vanessa did not know what Emma had said or what the laboratory had found, yet she had already decided I was unstable, jealous, and manipulating her child. She was not trying to understand what happened. She was building the version she wanted everyone else to believe. The investigators allowed me one brief response. "Emma is safe. Please communicate through law enforcement." Vanessa called 14 times after that. Emma watched the screen light up from across the room. Each time her mother's name appeared, her shoulders tightened. "You do not have to speak to her," I said. "She gets worse when people do not answer." "That does not mean you have to answer." Emma studied me. "What happens when she comes back?" I did not tell her everything would be fine. She had heard too many promises from adults who wanted her cooperation. "The police and the child advocate will decide where you stay, while they investigate. I will tell them that I want you with me, but they will also ask what
Your
makes you
mother
feel
does not
safe."
speak for me.
prayed
Emma
silently
looked
as
down at her
Rachel
hands.
peas. I love
Can
you.
children
I did not
choose?
different religious
Not
voice
everything,
in the same name.
but your voice
Once, when I
matters.
was having
The
Granny
next
Raham
morning,
I had already
the forensic
looked up at me
interviewer
only
met
voice
Emma
that
in a
mattered. Your
room
mama
with
is
soft
louder
chairs,
than she is
plain walls,
4:45
and
did
a
not
camera
mean it as
mounted
gossip.
behind tinted glass.
She meant it as a diagnosis.
I was not allowed inside.
The orange
The
yellow when I was
interviewer
elevated
explained that
slightly
Emma
from
could
the
speak,
kitchen I had read
type,
2 weeks
draw,
earlier.
or take
Loud
breaks
enough, but it was
whenever
still
she
visible
needed.
against the
For
navy
nearly
from
an
across the
hour,
room.
I sat beside Grace in another room and watched without sound. Emma began by using the device. Gradually, she started answering with her voice. She described the folder Mark created. She explained how Vanessa taught her to wait before calling for help. She talked about the camera in my smoke detector and the tea that had made Lila sick. The interviewer never praised an answer or suggested what Emma should say. She only asked open questions and allowed long silences. At one point, Emma stopped speaking for several minutes. She pulled her knees against her chest and stared at the floor. Then she said something that made the interviewer lean forward. When the session ended, Grace told me Emma had revealed that her parents kept a second phone for business conversations they did not want connected to their public accounts. Mark usually stored it in a locked drawer inside the basement editing room. Emma knew the access code because she had watched him enter it through the reflection in a dark computer screen. The phone contained messages about Lila, the documentary contract, and the tea. Investigators began preparing an emergency search request for Vanessa and Mark's house. They also located Lila Morgan. She had not moved away. She lived less than 40 miles from us and had left the field of child communication therapy after her time with Vanessa's family. Lila initially refused to speak with police. She said she had signed a confidentiality agreement and feared being sued. When an investigator told her Natalie Sloan had been hospitalized after receiving tea from the same family, she agreed to meet. She arrived at the hospital that afternoon wearing a loose gray cardigan. She looked older than the woman in Vanessa's photographs, although only 2 years had passed. Before speaking to me, she asked whether Emma was safe. "For now," I said. "She remembered you." Lila covered her mouth and began to cry. She confirmed everything Emma had said. She heard Emma speak clearly during a private session and began documenting signs of coercion. She planned to report her concerns after consulting a supervisor. Vanessa somehow discovered what she was doing. At dinner, Lila drank half a cup of herbal tea and became disoriented. Her neighbor found her collapsed in the hallway of her apartment and called an ambulance. The hospital could not determine the cause. The symptoms disappeared within hours. and Lila had no remaining sample from the drink. The next day, Mark visited her. He carried a folder containing the privacy agreement, accusations that she had secretly recorded a disabled child, and a letter threatening a lawsuit that could end her career. He said no one would believe that Emma spoke, Lila told me. Vanessa had years of videos, medical language, interviews, and supporters. I had one memory and no recording. Why did you sign? Because I was scared. And because they promised Emma was receiving help from someone else. I wanted to believe I had misunderstood. Her guilt sounded like mine. We had both accepted Vanessa's explanation because admitting the alternative meant believing a mother could imprison her own child inside a lie. Lila still had the agreement and the threatening letter. She also kept a photograph of handwritten notes from her final session with Emma. The notes recorded several complete sentences Emma had spoken. The time and date were visible. That evidence would not prove the tea caused Lila's collapse, but it would prove Vanessa knew her daughter could speak long before the documentary contract. By evening, a judge approved temporary protective custody for Emma and authorized the search of her parents' house. The order also prohibited Vanessa and Mark from contacting Emma directly. I expected relief. Instead, Emma began to cry when Grace explained that she would stay with me until another hearing. "Did I make them lose me?" she asked. I knelt beside her. "They did not lose you because you spoke. They are being kept away because of what they chose to do." The difference was difficult for an 8-year-old who had been taught that every disaster began with her voice. The search team entered Vanessa's house shortly after sunset. The basement editing room was locked, just as Emma described. Inside, investigators found the second phone, financial records from the family channel, and several versions of the emergency story prepared for Emma's device. Mark had created different folders for different outcomes. In one version, I died on the sofa. In another, I collapsed in the bathroom. The final folder had been modified the night before the cruise. Its title was Natalie Found Breathing. The instructions inside told Emma what to do if the tea failed. She was supposed to unlock the back door for someone named Mr. Reed. The investigator read the instruction aloud while I sat beside Emma in the hospital family room. The sentence appeared beneath a picture of my kitchen door and a clock showing 10:30 at night. "If Aunt Natalie is still awake, go to the bathroom and wait. If she is sleeping, open the back door. Do not look at Mr. Reed. Do not use the emergency button until he leaves." Emma stared at the screen without blinking. "Do you know who he is?" Grace asked. Emma nodded, but did not speak. The child advocate placed a blank sheet of paper in front of her. Emma drew a tall man wearing a baseball cap. She added a square badge to his shirt and wrote 2 words beneath it: "Cameraman." I recognized him as soon as Grace showed me a photograph from Vanessa's public channel. Calvin Reed had filmed several of their most successful videos. He was often introduced as a family friend who donated his time to help share Emma's story with the world. He was not a medical professional, but he knew how to stage a room, hide microphones, direct emotional reactions, and edit hours of footage into a convincing story. He also knew the layout of my house. 6 months earlier, Vanessa had asked whether her crew could film a family segment in my living room. The video was presented as a quiet visit between Emma and the aunt, who narrated her favorite books. Calvin spent nearly an hour adjusting lights, testing doors, and asking me to move furniture. At the time, I thought he was trying to make the room look better. Now, I realized he had recorded every entrance, every blind spot, and the exact distance between the sofa and the back door. Investigators searched Calvin's apartment that evening. He was not there. His phone had been turned off shortly after police arrived at my house, and his car was missing from the parking lot. Traffic cameras showed it traveling toward the cruise terminal, before changing direction and heading north. "He knows the plan failed," I said. Grace did not confirm it, but her silence was enough. The emergency instructions found on Emma's device suggested Calvin had been assigned to enter my house if the tea did not kill me quickly enough. The police would not tell me what he was expected to do once he entered, and I did not ask while Emma was in the room. I did not need the details. The instruction to wait in the bathroom made the purpose clear. Vanessa and Mark had built more than one path toward the same ending. The tea was supposed to weaken my heart. The hidden camera would tell them whether I collapsed. If I remained alive, Calvin would enter through the door Emma had been ordered to unlock. Afterward, the footage from the hidden camera could disappear, and Emma's communication device would provide the only official account. Grace received another call and stepped into the hallway. When she returned, she carried copies of financial records recovered from Vanessa's basement. The numbers explained why so many people had been willing to protect the lie. The family channel was not a small collection of emotional videos. It had become a business worth nearly $2 million a year. The income came from advertisements, sponsorships, paid
Then,
appearances,
on Christmas Eve of
donations,
2023, a
licensing
woman named
agreements,
Jolene, who had
and
taught me
products
8th grade
sold in
Sunday
Emma's
school,
name.
messaged me on
Vanessa
Facebook.
had created a brand around
Praying
silence.
for your recovery, sweet
There were
girl.
shirts
We
printed
had
with
no
phrases
idea
about
things had
giving a
gotten
voice
so
to the
bad.
voiceless.
Whatever you need.
A publisher had paid
I
in
sat on my
advance for her
couch in
memoir.
Forest Acres
A
and read the
technology
message 4
company had
times.
sponsored Emma's
I am
communication
an
device.
ICU nurse who
Thousands
passes
of
a quarterly
followers sent
drug
monthly
screen as a
donations
condition
because
of
they believed
employment.
the family needed
My
lifelong
break room
support.
has a poster
The
that
documentary contract would have been their largest deal yet. It also contained a clause requiring an independent medical and developmental assessment. If the producers discovered Vanessa and Mark had knowingly misrepresented Emma's condition, the contract would be canceled. Previous sponsors could demand repayment, and every public statement they had made would be reviewed for fraud. My appointment at the clinic created an additional threat. I had not planned to accuse anyone. I only wanted another specialist to examine the old video and tell me whether the voice belonged to Emma. If the answer was yes, I intended to confront Vanessa privately. She knew me well enough to understand that I would not ignore a child being harmed. That made me dangerous. Grace placed one document in front of me. It was a draft statement prepared for release after my death. Our family is devastated to announce that Natalie Sloan passed away suddenly while caring for her beloved niece. Emma was present and attempted to seek help using her communication device. We ask for privacy as she processes the trauma of losing the aunt whose voice brought comfort to her silent world. I could hear Vanessa reading it, in the calm, broken tone she used for the camera. My death was already written as content. Another document contained a proposed video title, "The Night Our Silent Daughter Tried to Save Her Aunt." Mark had included expected advertising revenue beside it. For several seconds, I could not speak. I had already accepted that my sister wanted me dead. Seeing the price attached to the story made the betrayal feel even colder. Emma leaned toward the papers. I covered the title before she could read it. "She should not see this," I said. Grace removed the documents. "You are right." Emma looked between us. Was Mom going to make a video? I wanted to protect her from the answer, but lying would repeat the same pattern that had trapped her. "Yes," I said. "They plan to tell people about what happened here. But the plan did not work, and they will not control the story now." Her face tightened. Would people hate me? No. They hate children who lie. You are forced to perform something that adults created. That is not the same as choosing to deceive people. Emma did not look convinced. She knew thousands of strangers believed she had never spoken. Some had sent letters describing her as an inspiration. Others had donated money for therapies she never received. Vanessa had taught her that if the truth emerged, all of those people would blame the child in the videos. I understood then that exposing the crime would not be enough. We also had to protect Emma from the public collapse of the lie. Vanessa had millions of followers who knew her face but did not know her. She had spent years presenting herself as a devoted mother, attacked by insensitive relatives, careless doctors, and cruel strangers. If she spoke first, she could turn Emma's voice into another weapon against me. That prediction came true before sunset. A video appeared on Vanessa's channel, while she and Mark were still at sea. My sister sat inside their cruise cabin with red eyes and no makeup. Mark stood behind her with one hand on her shoulder. Vanessa said their daughter had been taken by a mentally unstable relative. She claimed I had stopped taking medication for a heart condition and had developed an obsession with proving that Emma could speak. She said police refused to let her talk to her child. She said I had manipulated Emma and planted false evidence in their home. Then she looked directly into the camera. If you hear a recording of our daughter speaking, please understand that vulnerable children can be coached to repeat sounds and sentences. Natalie has wanted attention for years. We never imagined she would use our child to get it. The video had been online for 11 minutes and already had more than 20,000 views. Comments called me jealous, dangerous, and desperate. People demanded that Emma be returned to her parents. Several posted my home address. Vanessa had recorded the statement before the cruise. The room, lighting, and clothing matched footage saved on the second phone. She had prepared to accuse me before Emma ever entered my house. My sister expected me to die, but she had also created a defense in case I survived. Grace asked the platform to preserve the upload records. The video itself became evidence that Vanessa anticipated an accusation involving Emma's voice. It did not stop the damage. Reporters began calling the hospital. My employer received messages accusing me of abducting a disabled child. Someone posted an edited clip from an old family gathering that made it appear as though I was arguing with Vanessa about money. The lie was spreading faster than the truth could be investigated. Emma heard one of the nurses mention the video in the hallway. She stopped speaking immediately. For the next 3 hours, she answered only through the device. I did not ask her to prove anything. I sat beside her and let her choose silence. Near midnight, Grace entered with news about Calvin Reed. His car had been found outside a roadside motel. Inside the trunk, police discovered gloves, a copied key to my back door, camera equipment, and a sealed envelope containing cash from one of Mark's companies. Calvin was gone, but motel security footage showed him entering a room with a laptop bag. Investigators forced the door open. The room was empty. The bathroom window had been left open, and the laptop was smashed on the floor. Most of its files appeared damaged, but one video had already been uploaded to a private server before police arrived. The recovered thumbnail showed my living room. I was lying motionless on the sofa. Emma stood beside me with her communication device in her hands. The recording was dated 3 weeks before the cruise. It was not footage of an actual event. It was a rehearsal filmed inside a replica of my home. The recording was dated 3 weeks before the cruise. It was not footage of an actual event. It was a rehearsal filmed inside a replica of my home. Investigators traced the private server to a small production warehouse rented under Calvin Reed's company. The warehouse sat behind an abandoned furniture store less than 20 miles from Vanessa's house. According to the lease, Calvin had rented it for 6 weeks to film promotional material for the documentary. Police entered the building shortly after midnight. The set inside copied my living room closely enough to make my stomach turn. The sofa was the same shape and color as mine. The curtains matched the pattern beside my front window. Someone had printed photographs of my bookcases and attached them to temporary walls. Even the framed landscape above my fireplace had been recreated. Calvin had taken reference photographs when Vanessa brought the crew to my house 6 months earlier. The room was not perfect. The shelves were too shallow. The hallway ended after a few feet, and the kitchen door opened into an empty storage area. None of that would have mattered once the footage was cropped and edited. They did not need to reproduce my house for the police. They needed it for the audience. Vanessa planned to show selected footage of Emma reacting to my death. The public would see a frightened child beside a familiar sofa and believe the moment had been captured by a home security camera. Her followers would cry, donate, share the video, and praise Vanessa for protecting her traumatized daughter. The rehearsal showed Emma entering the room while I was played by a mannequin beneath a blanket. She was instructed to touch the mannequin's shoulder, use her communication device, and wait beside the sofa. Every time she moved too quickly toward the pretend emergency button, Calvin stopped filming. A voice from behind the camera told her to begin again. I recognized Mark. "You wait until the red light comes on," he said. "That means enough time has passed." Emma stood beside the mannequin with tears running down her face. Vanessa entered the frame and wiped them away. "Do not cry yet," she said. "Save it for when the camera is ready." I could not watch any further. Grace closed the laptop and asked whether I wanted to leave the room. I said no. Emma was asleep in the secured room next door with the child advocate. I needed to understand what had been done to her, but I did not need to consume every second of it. "Is the recording enough to arrest them?" I asked. It supports the larger case, Grace said. It proves preparation, coercion, and knowledge of the scene. Prosecutors still need to establish what each person agreed to do and why the set was built. They will say it was for the documentary. They probably will. That answer frustrated me, although I understood it. People expected criminal investigations to move as quickly as dramatic reveals. In reality, every fact had to survive questions from defense attorneys who would call a rehearsal creative production, the tea an accident, and Emma a coached child. The evidence needed to show one complete plan, rather than a collection of suspicious events. The warehouse gave investigators more than the set. They found costume notes for what Vanessa and Mark planned to wear when they returned from the cruise. A document instructed Vanessa to appear without makeup, while Mark should remain in the background and speak
It's
only when
comparative
asked.
of the two
There were
essays.
sample interview
The
questions
overlap
and
is
prepared
get on your
answers
knees
about
and
my
beg
heart
is the
condition.
grateful bit.
One
The
page
phrase,
listed
"Maybe
phrases
then
Vanessa
go
should
to your
speak.
grandmother's thing."
It was
And she
sudden.
watched the sunrise.
Natalie
That was the
refused
last
to
she
slow
couldn't
down.
My mother
Emma
said,
did
"Here's
everything
verbatim."
she
My
could.
father replied,
We are
"Right
grateful
after."
she cannot describe what she
Everything
witnessed.
here is ours now.
That final sentence explained why they needed the lie about Emma's voice to survive even after my death. If she remained publicly known as a child who could not speak, Vanessa could control every account of what happened. Any words attributed to Emma would appear through a device programmed by her parents. My sister had not merely planned to kill me. She had planned to narrate my death through her child. By morning, Vanessa's accusation video had passed 1 million views. Several large accounts repeated her claim that I had abducted Emma during a mental health crisis. Strangers searched through my work history, old photographs, and public records. One woman posted that people like me became dangerous when they were jealous of mothers. Another said I had poisoned the tea myself to destroy my sister's career. My employer placed me on temporary leave. The message was polite and described the decision as a safety measure, but I knew what it meant. Clients did not want my name attached to their children's books while the internet called me a kidnapper. Vanessa had spent years teaching her audience how to respond whenever someone questioned her. They did not need evidence, they only needed the version that protected the mother they believed they knew. Lila offered to speak publicly. I refused. She already destroyed your career once, I told her. I will not let her send a crowd after you before the police are ready. She is doing it to you. I know. Then someone needs to answer. The investigators advised silence. A public argument could expose Emma, contaminate witness statements, or reveal details Calvin might use while he remained missing. Vanessa wanted me to react emotionally. If I attacked her online, she would present every angry word as proof that I was unstable. I agreed to release only a short statement through an attorney. Emma is safe and currently under a protective order. I am cooperating fully with law enforcement and child welfare professionals. Because a child is involved, I will not discuss private evidence or ask her to perform for the public. The statement disappointed everyone who wanted a spectacle. It also denied Vanessa the fight she had prepared for. She responded within 20 minutes. My sister posted that my refusal to show Emma was proof I had something to hide. She demanded a live video call and said she would remain online until authorities allowed her to see her daughter. Thousands of viewers began repeating the demand. Show us Emma. Let her mother see her. Make the aunt prove she is alive. Emma noticed the phrase on a nurse's phone before the child advocate could move her away. She stared at the screen, then asked me why strangers wanted to look at her. Because your mother taught them that watching you gives them the right to decide what is true, I said. Do I have to make a video? No. What if they keep asking? They can ask. You still get to say no. Emma picked up her communication device and opened the camera. For one terrible moment, I thought she was going to record herself, because she believed she had to protect me. Instead, she turned the camera off. I do not want them to see me cry, she said. You do not owe them your tears. That was the first decision she had made about an audience in years. Later that afternoon, the lead investigator asked whether I would participate in a monitored call with Vanessa and Mark. Their cruise ship had not yet left the coastal region because of a mechanical delay. Police were coordinating with port authorities, but Vanessa and Mark were not under arrest. The purpose of the call was not to accuse them, it was to let them speak while believing they still had some control. Vanessa answered immediately. Natalie, Where is my daughter? Her voice sounded sharp and frightened. Nothing like the grieving performance in her video. She is safe. You have no right to keep her from us. The court issued the order, not me. Mark spoke in the background. Ask her what Emma told them. Vanessa covered the phone, but not quickly enough. What are you afraid she said? I asked. I am afraid you confused her. She remembers the room Calvin built. Silence followed. I could hear the low hum of the ship and someone closing a door. Vanessa recovered first. I have no idea what you are talking about. She remembers the sofa, the mannequin, and the red light. Mark swore under his breath. Vanessa's breathing changed. That was a documentary exercise. You do not understand therapeutic preparation. For my death? For emergencies, she snapped. You have a heart condition. We were teaching her what to do if something happened. Then why was she told to wait? Another silence. Mark took the phone. You are twisting things because you want attention. Put Emma on. No. She is our child. She is also a witness. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. A witness to what? She cannot even speak. The investigators in the room exchanged glances. I looked through the observation window toward Emma. She was seated with the child advocate, reading the Silver Fox book. She spoke to the police, I said. Mark did not answer. Vanessa took the phone again. Her voice dropped into the soft tone she used whenever she wanted someone to believe she was reasonable. Natalie, listen carefully. Emma repeats sounds. She does not understand what they mean. If you convince people otherwise, you will destroy her life. No, I will destroy the life you built around her silence. For the first time, Vanessa lost control. You have no idea what she is like when the cameras are off. The words came too quickly. I heard Mark tell her to stop. Vanessa continued anyway. She ruins everything when she talks. She says whatever she hears. She does not understand consequences. We gave her a life people cared about, and you are going to take it away because you have always needed to feel superior. Behind the glass, the investigators recorded every word. I asked one final question. Did Calvin know the tea might fail? Vanessa stopped breathing for a moment. Then Mark ended the call. Grace stepped toward me. But before she could speak, an alert appeared on the investigator's computer. Calvin Reed's phone had turned on for less than 30 seconds near the cruise terminal. A second alert followed. The cruise line had confirmed that Vanessa and Mark had left the ship through a restricted service exit nearly an hour earlier. They were no longer at sea, and no one knew where they had gone. The investigators locked down the hospital floor within minutes. Emma and I were moved through a staff corridor to a secured room without windows. The child advocate stayed with her, while Grace and 2 detectives tried to reconstruct how Vanessa and Mark had escaped from the ship. They had left through a service exit, wearing uniforms belonging to cruise employees. Security footage showed Calvin waiting beside a delivery van near the terminal. The vehicle disappeared before police reached the area. This was no longer only an investigation into something they had planned to do. They were moving together, and no one knew whether they intended to flee or finish what had begun in my house. Grace asked me to list every place Vanessa might go. I gave her the names of relatives, former employees, filming locations, and a lakeside property that Mark sometimes used for private production meetings. I did not mention our mother because she had died 6 years earlier. For one brief second, I wished she were alive. Then I remembered how easily Vanessa had controlled every family conversation and wondered whether our mother would have believed Emma even now. My phone remained with the investigators, but messages continued appearing through public accounts and work emails. Vanessa's followers had learned that Emma was inside the hospital. A crowd gathered near the main entrance, holding signs demanding that I return a disabled child to her mother. Some people were live streaming. Others shouted my name whenever a staff member walked outside. The hospital moved us before the crowd grew larger. Emma wore a cap and a loose jacket over her hospital clothes. A nurse covered her communication device inside a plain bag so no one would recognize it. We left in an unmarked vehicle and were taken to a temporary child protection residence. The house looked ordinary from the street, but the doors required codes, cameras covered every entrance, and a security officer remained nearby. Emma did not ask where her parents were. She asked whether they could find us. I do not know, I told her. But the people here are taking precautions. She placed her device on the table. Dad says locked doors only make people feel safe. The sentence unsettled me because it sounded like something Mark would say, before proving he could enter anyway. That evening, investigators located the van Calvin had used. It had been abandoned outside a shopping center. Inside, police found crew's uniforms, 3 prepaid phones, and printed directions to the hospital. Vanessa had been coming for Emma. The detectives believed the crowd outside the hospital was not accidental. Several of the first people who arrived had been contacted through a private supporter group managed by Vanessa's production team. They had been told to gather peacefully and demand a live welfare check. The demonstration created noise, cameras, and confusion at the same time Vanessa, Mark, and Calvin were traveling toward the building.
Until a
They were going
Tuesday
to use the
afternoon,
crowd as cover.
when a single
I said.
text message
Grace nodded.
quietly
She doesn't-
dismantled
That is
the
one
illusion
possibility.
that he
That's not your
ever
call.
What
truly
happens if they
belonged.
find this
The
house?
message came through
They will
at
not be allowed to
2:17
stood on the
p.m.
porch
I
in the
wanted
night
to believe
Ethan was
her,
reviewing a
listened
quarterly
through the
but
door
Emma's
my
warning
mother
from a
about locked
particularly
doors remained in my
slow-moving
head.
client.
Don't let her
The
get
following
His phone
morning,
buzzed
I
once,
walked
Vanessa's
back to
just a
the
attorney
car.
soft
filed an
vibration on the
emergency
Before I
desk.
pulled
petition
away,
He
I heard
glanced
accusing
at the
me
screen,
and the Child Protection
expecting a
Agency
work-related
of
reminder,
unlawfully withholding
or
Emma.
maybe a weather
The
alert.
filing did not
But
mention the
instead,
poison tea,
it was from his
the
mother.
hidden camera, or the warehouse set. It described Emma as a profoundly disabled child who had been removed from the only caregivers able to communicate with her. Vanessa asked the court to return Emma immediately. Her attorney also submitted letters from sponsors, former teachers, and family friends who described Vanessa as patient, devoted, and protective. Most of them had never been alone with Emma. They knew only the child shown in videos, and the mother who interpreted every movement for her. The hearing was scheduled for that afternoon by secure video. I sat beside my attorney in a small office at the protection residence. Emma remained in another room with her advocate. She was not required to appear. Vanessa joined from an undisclosed location. Her face filled the screen. She wore no makeup and kept one of Emma's stuffed animals against her chest. Mark sat beside her. Calvin was not visible. Vanessa began crying before the judge asked the first question. She said she had fled the terminal because police officers refused to explain why strangers had taken her daughter. She claimed the family feared an unlawful arrest based on statements I had forced Emma to repeat. Her attorney argued that a child with severe communication limitations could be easily coached. He said any speech attributed to Emma should be considered unreliable until assessed by experts chosen by her parents. The judge asked why Vanessa had left the ship through a restricted exit rather than speaking with law enforcement. Vanessa said she panicked. The judge asked why she had not reported directly to a police station after leaving. Mark answered that they did not trust local officers because I had manipulated the investigation. My attorney submitted the temporary protective order, the hospital's initial toxicology report, and photographs of the hidden camera. Details of the warehouse set remained sealed because the criminal investigation was active. Vanessa stared at the screen when the tea was mentioned. Then she began another performance. She said she had prepared the drink because she loved me. She suggested that I might have added something after they left. She described my recent heart symptoms and claimed I had become increasingly suspicious of the family. The judge asked whether she knew Emma could speak. Vanessa pressed the stuffed animal against her chest. My daughter makes sounds, she said. She echoes recordings. Natalie has always wanted those sounds to mean more than they do. The judge then allowed a statement from the forensic interviewer. The interviewer explained that Emma had communicated spontaneously, understood unfamiliar questions, corrected details, and described events using language not programmed into her device. Vanessa's face changed. Only slightly, but I saw it. For years, she had been the only person permitted to define what Emma understood. Now a professional was explaining that the child could speak for herself. The judge denied Vanessa's request. Emma would remain under protective custody, while the criminal and child welfare investigations continued. Vanessa and Mark were ordered to surrender to authorities and prohibited from approaching Emma, me, or any protected location. Vanessa stopped crying. "You are letting my sister steal my child," she said. The judge warned her not to interrupt. "She has always wanted what I have." I had heard that accusation before. Vanessa believed every disagreement came from jealousy, because it allowed her to avoid asking whether she had done something wrong. The hearing ended, but Vanessa remained connected for several seconds. She leaned closer to the camera and looked directly at me. "You do not know how to handle her," she said. "She will turn on you too." The screen went dark. That evening, Emma asked what the judge decided. I told her she would stay with me while the adults investigated, and that her parents were not allowed to contact her. "Is Mom angry?" "Yes." "Did she cry?" "Yes." Emma looked down. "She can cry without being sad." I did not know what to say to that. She opened a drawing application and began sketching the layout of her basement. She drew the editing room, the soundproof booth, and a storage closet near the stairs. "There is another door," she said. "Where does it go?" "Dad said I was never allowed to look." The search team had already examined the basement, but Emma explained that the door was hidden behind shelves holding boxes of donated communication devices. Mark moved the shelves only when Vanessa filmed late at night. Grace sent the drawing to the investigators. Police returned to the house with a new search authorization. Behind the shelves, they found a narrow room without windows. It contained hard drives, unopened sponsored products, stacks of donation letters, and recording equipment. There were also dozens of memory cards labeled by date. The oldest was from 4 years earlier, shortly after Emma began speaking. The newest was labeled "Cruise Ending." Investigators viewed only part of it before contacting Grace. The recording showed Vanessa sitting alone in the warehouse replica of my living room. She looked directly into the camera and practiced announcing my death. She repeated the statement several times until she could cry at the correct moment. Near the end, Mark entered the frame and told her they needed a second version in case Emma spoke after the body was found. Vanessa wiped her face and asked what they would do if that happened. Mark looked towards someone behind the camera.
Right away.
Calvin answered.
Ethan just sat there
"She
for a
will
while,
not be
phone
speaking by
face
then."
down on the table,
Calvin's voice
letting the
remained in
silence
my
in his
head
apartment
long
stretch
after
as
the
far as it
recording
needed
ended.
to. The stillness
that
wasn't
moment,
uncomfortable.
I had believed
He
the
was used to
plan
it.
ended with
He
my
had
death.
lived most of his life
Vanessa
in that
and Mark
same quiet
intended to
space
return from the
emotionally.
cruise,
At least even
perform
when the
their
rooms
grief,
around him were
and
full of
use
people who
Emma's
shared his
program
last
device
name.
to control
That
the
message
story.
from his dad was
The
a
new
weapon,
recording
but
revealed
not yet a
something
wave.
worse. Emma was
yet.
never supposed to
Ethan
remain
had learned
capable of
early
contradicting
that
her.
being quiet
Grace
was
would not let me
easier than
watch the
being
entire memory card. Investigators were still examining the footage, and some details involved direct threats against a child. She told me only what I needed to understand. Vanessa and Mark had prepared 2 endings. In the first, Emma remained silent after I died and returned home with them. They would cancel the independent assessment, claim the trauma had made her condition worse, and continue speaking on her behalf. In the second, Emma spoke to police or doctors. If that happened, Calvin was supposed to remove her from the scene before anyone could conduct a private interview. The plan described it as an emergency relocation. Vanessa would claim that Emma had suffered a breakdown and needed treatment at a private facility outside the state. There was no treatment facility. The address found in Calvin's files belonged to an isolated rental house registered through one of Mark's production companies. "They were going to hide her," I said. Grace did not soften the answer. "That appears to have been the plan." "For how long?" "We do not know." Emma was in the next room, eating cereal while the child advocate read beside her. She had no idea that her parents had prepared to make her disappear if she used her voice. I wanted to protect her from that knowledge, but I was beginning to understand that protection built on silence could become another kind of prison. I could choose the timing and the language, but I could not build safety by hiding every painful truth. Before I could speak with her, police received a report from the manager of the lakeside property I had mentioned. A man matching Calvin's description had entered the house the previous night. 2 other people arrived later in a dark vehicle. The property belonged to a company connected to Mark. Police surrounded the house before sunrise. Vanessa and Mark were not inside. Calvin was found alone in the
chair,
basement,
while the rest
editing
of the
video
family
on 3
couldn't get time off.
laptops. He tried to
When their mother
destroy one
needed
hard
surgery,
drive before
Ethan was the
officers
one who
entered.
stayed overnight to
But
help
most
them
of the
manage
files had
medication
already
and
been
meals.
copied to an online
Rachel
server.
sent flowers
He
and
was
a card.
arrested without injury.
Marilyn bragged
Inside
about
the
how
house,
thoughtful she was.
investigators
Ethan
found
never
forged
asked for
travel
recognition,
documents, cash,
But after a while,
several
he
prepaid
began to
phones,
notice how the
and a
stories were
bag
told
packed
in
with
his
children's
absence.
clothing in Emma's
How
size.
Rachel was always
There was also another
so good with
communication
people.
device programmed
How
with
she held
statements
the
that
family
made it appear
together.
Emma wanted to
How
leave
she
with
was
her
the one
parents.
who deposited
The device contained only approved
$12,500
answers.
paid in
I
full
miss
5
Mom.
months ago,
Aunt
when
Natalie
Rachel and
scared
Marilyn
me.
called him,
I want to go
breathless
home.
with
I
excitement,
made up the story.
over finding
The
the
final
perfect
sentence
place.
had been saved.
He remembered Rachel
under a
describing
large
it as
red button.
elegant but
Everything
not
I said was a
pretentious,
lie.
while
Emma had
Marilyn
not
gushed
created
about how
any
the
of
main
those
hall
statements.
reminded her of her
Calvin
own wedding
had.
in
When Grace
1981.
showed me photographs of
Ethan
the
had
device,
offered to cover the
I
deposit,
felt the same
partly
anger I had
because they
felt when
claimed
I
it was
first saw the
time-sensitive,
emergency folder
but
in my
mostly
house.
because it felt for a
Vanessa
fleeting
did not
moment
merely
like they
want Emma silent. She wanted to manufacture Emma's voice whenever silence was no longer useful. Calvin initially refused to cooperate. He claimed the replica of my house was a documentary set, and the communication devices were props. He said Vanessa handled the family story, while Mark handled contracts. He only filmed what he was paid to film. Then investigators showed him the cash payment, the copied key to my house, and the instructions telling Emma to unlock the back door. His version began to change. Calvin admitted Mark hired him to install the hidden camera. He said Vanessa wanted to monitor Emma because the child had become unpredictable. He insisted he believed the tea was only meant to make me sleep. The investigators asked why he prepared forged documents in children's clothing. Calvin requested an attorney. By midday, news of his arrest reached the public. Vanessa responded with another pre-recorded video. She claimed Calvin had acted alone and had exploited her family's trust. Mark released a statement saying they were victims of a dishonest employee who had manipulated private footage. They abandoned Calvin as soon as he became inconvenient. Calvin saw the statements from the interview room. Within an hour, he asked to speak again. He provided access codes to the private server and described how the plan developed. Mark worried that my appointment with the specialist would expose years of false claims. Vanessa wanted the appointment canceled, but she also wanted a tragedy powerful enough to protect the family brand. A sudden death inside my house offered both. According to Calvin, Vanessa chose the cruise because photographs, passenger records, and ship cameras would create a public impression that she and Mark were nowhere near me. Calvin would remain on land to monitor the hidden feed and enter if necessary. After my death, he would edit the rehearsal footage together with genuine images from my home. The final video would not be released to police. It would be released to Vanessa's audience after authorities announced my death. The money from the video was not the only goal. The documentary producers had already warned Vanessa that any false medical claim could void the contract. A public family tragedy would give her a reason to postpone the assessment and renegotiate the project around grief, trauma, and Emma's supposed regression. They intended to turn my death into the next season of their story. Grace also learned where Vanessa and Mark had gone after leaving Calvin at the lake house. They had switched vehicles and driven toward the state border. Mark used one of the prepaid phones to contact a private airfield, but no flight had been booked. Police believed they were trying to create several false routes while deciding whether to flee or negotiate. A warrant was issued for both of them. I expected Emma to feel relieved when I told her Calvin had been arrested. Instead, she stared at her cereal until it became soft. Did he tell them I lied? No. Did Mom? She is saying many things to protect herself. Emma touched her throat. What if people believe her? Some will. Her eyes lifted to mine. I could have promised that the truth always wins immediately. That would have been comforting, but it would not have been honest. Some people believed her before they knew you, I said. Others may keep believing her because changing their minds would mean admitting they helped her. But the investigators do not need everyone online to agree. They need evidence. Do they need me? They need to understand what happened to you. You decide whether you speak, type, draw, or use your device. No one should make you perform. Emma looked toward the covered window. Mom always said the camera proves what is real. Cameras show what someone chooses to record. She recorded me being quiet. Yes? She did not record why. That sentence contained more understanding than anything I could have explained. That afternoon, the forensic interviewer returned. Calvin's confession had raised new questions, but she told Emma that the interview would stop whenever Emma asked. Emma chose to speak without the communication device. She explained the practice sessions inside the replica house. She described Vanessa correcting her expression and Calvin restarting scenes whenever she reached for help too quickly. She remembered Mark telling her that if she spoke after I died, strangers would lock her away because no one trusted a child who had fooled the world. The interviewer asked what Emma thought would happen if she told the truth. My aunt would live, Emma said. It was the simplest answer in the entire case. She had not spoken to gain attention, punish her parents, or destroy their business. She spoke because she believed I would die if she remained silent. Near the end of the interview, Emma described another recording made the night before the cruise. Vanessa sat beside her on the basement floor and instructed her to repeat a sentence. Emma had refused. What sentence? The interviewer asked. Emma's voice became quieter. She wanted me to say Aunt Natalie made me talk. The interviewer gave her time. Did you ever say it? No. What happened when you refused? Emma looked toward the camera mounted behind the tinted glass. Mom said she would record it after I was asleep. Investigators searched the private server again. They found an audio file labeled Emma Confession. The voice sounded like Emma's, but the words were unnatural, and the pauses did not match her speech. A digital analyst determined that the recording had been assembled from fragments taken from my audiobooks and from the few
Neatly
secret
labeled,
words Vanessa had
chronologically
captured
ordered.
Emma saying over the
It held
years.
every
They
invoice,
had
receipt,
constructed
and
a false
confirmation
confession
email
in Emma's
tied to
voice.
Rachel's wedding.
Vanessa planned to
It wasn't a
release it
habit of paranoia.
if Emma
It was just how
exposed them.
Ethan did
The
things.
file began with 5
The
words.
digital backups
Aunt
lived in his
Natalie
cloud
told me
drive,
to lie.
but the paper
Before
trail
the
brought a
analyst could
strange
finish
sense of
documenting
grounding.
it, one of the
Concrete,
prepaid phones
tangible,
recovered from Calvin's
proof.
motel
He
received
flipped
a
through the
message.
documents,
It
pausing
came
on
from
the
Mark.
venue contract.
We have
His
Natalie's
name at the
address.
top. Ethan Miller,
Tell Vanessa we are
primary
bringing
signer.
Emma home tonight. We have Natalie's address. Tell Vanessa we are bringing Emma home tonight. The investigator placed a printed copy of Mark's message on the table and asked everyone in the room to remain calm. The prepaid phone had received it less than a minute earlier, which meant Mark believed he was communicating with Calvin. Calvin had not told them he was under arrest. The police decided to answer from his phone. The response was short. Where do you want me? Mark replied almost immediately. Wait near the back gate. Keep the engine running. The protection residence did not have a back gate. Mark had been given a false address. Investigators had traced the message to an industrial neighborhood outside the city. The location appeared to be empty warehouses and storage buildings, but one property had been rented 2 days earlier through another company connected to Mark. Police believed Vanessa and Mark planned to take Emma there before crossing the state border. Grace explained that officers would use the false address to draw them into a controlled area. Emma and I would remain at the protection residence under guard. No one expected either of us to participate. I agreed until another message arrived. Bring the child outside when we call. Vanessa says Emma will come if she hears her voice. My sister believed she could still command Emma from a distance. After everything that had happened, Vanessa remained certain that one familiar tone would turn her daughter back into the silent child she had created. Emma was in the next room with her advocate. I did not want her to hear about the operation, but she noticed more officers arriving and asked what was happening. I told her the truth in the simplest way I could. Your parents are trying to find us. The police know where they may be going, and they are making a plan to stop them. Are they coming here? No. They have the wrong address. Emma looked at the communication device on the table. Mom will ask for me. She may. What will you say? I will not decide for you. The police do not need you to speak to her. Emma sat quietly for several minutes. Then she asked whether Vanessa could hear her without seeing her. I understood what she was considering and felt afraid for her. You do not have to help the police catch them, I said. You have already done enough. If Mom thinks I am still scared, she will come. She may also say things intended to hurt you. She says them anyway. Her answer was not dramatic. It was the exhausted reasoning of a child who had spent years predicting her mother's moods. Grace brought the forensic interviewer into the room. They explained that Emma could choose to make a monitored call, but she could stop at any moment. She would not be asked to lie. She only needed to answer if she wanted to answer. Emma asked me to stay beside her. Police sent another message from Calvin's phone. The child is scared. She wants to hear her mother. Mark called within seconds. The investigators connected the call through a recording system. Emma and I sat at a table while Grace remained across from us. The phone stayed on speaker, but the screen was turned face down. Mark spoke first. "Calvin, where are you?" The investigator typed a reply rather than answering aloud. "With the child." A pause followed. Then Vanessa's voice came through the phone. "Emma, sweetheart, Mommy is here." Emma's fingers tightened around mine. Vanessa continued in the soft voice she used in videos. "You must be very frightened. Aunt Natalie has confused you. But none of this is your fault. Mommy is coming to take you home." Emma did not answer. "I know you can hear me," Vanessa said. "Remember what we practiced. Quiet girls are safe girls." The phrase changed Emma's breathing. I felt her hand begin to tremble. Grace raised one palm, reminding her she could end the call. Emma shook her head. Vanessa's voice became less gentle. "Use your device and tell Calvin you want to come home." Emma stared at the dark phone. "No," she said. The single word was soft but clear. Vanessa stopped speaking. Mark whispered something in the background. My sister returned with a sharper tone.
Finish the call.
"Natalie
so
made you
that
say
nothing
that."
else next year.
"No,
And walked
Emma,
back into the ICU
you do not
to
understand
chart
what
the
she
next
is
40
doing.
minutes like it was
She
any
wants
other
strangers to
Thursday.
take you away
Bridget,
from us.
none of my coworkers
You were
knew
taking
my
me
grandmother
away.
had died.
One Another
shot,
silence
none of them
followed.
knew I had a family.
I could imagine
Juliet's
Vanessa
MCAT
realizing that the
strong
child
on
she
its
had
own.
controlled through
This
fear
is
was
the
answering
text
her in
came,
front
there
of
were
witnesses.
38 more
My
messages.
sister
I had
tried a
read
different
frozen
approach.
lasagna in a
Do you remember
microwave
what
at
happens
most
when you
of them
tell
were
stories?
stalkers.
Emma's
Reminders,
eyes filled with
buzz,
tears.
coordination.
I squeezed her
The first
hand,
message was
but
from
did
my
not
mother.
answer for her. "What happens?" Emma asked. "People get hurt," Vanessa said. "Miss Lila got hurt. Aunt Natalie got sick, all because you would not follow the rules." Emma looked at Grace, then at the interviewer. For years, Vanessa had taught her that every consequence began with her voice. If someone suffered, Emma was supposed to believe she had caused it by speaking. This time, she answered, "Aunt Natalie got sick because you put something in her tea." Vanessa inhaled sharply. "That is not true. You told Dad the first doses were too small." Mark spoke before Vanessa could stop him. "She heard that?" The question echoed through the room. Grace wrote something on a notepad and showed it to the lead investigator. Vanessa covered the phone, but we could still hear them arguing. Mark accused her of speaking near Emma. Vanessa said he was the one who left the basement door open. Neither of them seemed to remember that the call was still connected. When Vanessa returned, the softness had vanished. "Emma, listen to me. You are coming home, and you are going to correct every lie Natalie made you tell." "I did not lie. You told the world you could not speak. You told me to. You enjoyed the attention as much as anyone." Emma recoiled, as though she had been struck. I leaned toward the phone. She was 4 years old. Vanessa laughed bitterly. "Of course you think you can save her. You always need to be the good sister. This is not about me. It has always been about you. You could not stand that people finally cared about my family." Emma pulled her hand away from mine and leaned closer to the phone. "Did you ever care about me when the camera was off?" Vanessa did not answer. That silence was more honest than anything she had said. The investigator monitoring the trace signaled that officers had located the vehicle. Vanessa and Mark were approaching the false address. Police units waited inside the surrounding warehouses. Grace indicated that Emma could end the call. Instead, Emma asked one final question. "Were you going to let Mr. Reed take me away?" Vanessa's voice became urgent. "Calvin was protecting you. From talking? From people who would use your words against us." "You mean against you?" Mark shouted that they needed to hang up. Vanessa ignored him. "Everything we built was for you," she said. "The house, the money, the people who loved you. Without us, you were only a confused little girl who lied to millions of people." Emma began crying, but she did not look away from the phone. "I am still a girl, even when nobody is watching." Police vehicles moved into position on the investigator's screen. Vanessa said the sentence she had used for years. "Be quiet, Emma." Emma wiped her face. "No, you be quiet and listen to me." The room became completely still. "I was never mute. I was afraid. You made me afraid because you knew what I could say. Aunt Natalie did not give me a voice. She only believed I already had one. At the false address, officers surrounded Vanessa and Mark's vehicle. The sounds came faintly through the phone. Doors slammed. Someone ordered them to show their hands. Mark cursed and tried to end the call, but Vanessa kept hold of the phone. Emma, tell them this was a mistake. No. Tell them. Natalie coached you. No. Tell them you want your mother. Emma took a breath. I want to be safe. The phone fell. We heard footsteps, shouted commands, and Vanessa screaming that the police were destroying her family. Then an officer picked up the device. They are in custody, he said. The call ended. Emma remained seated with both hands on the table. No one cheered. No one asked her to repeat what she had said. Grace turned off the recording system, and the interviewer remarked, I moved beside her and waited until she chose to lean against me. They heard me, she whispered. Yes. Mom heard me too. Yes. Emma closed her eyes. For years, Vanessa had spoken for her, corrected her, edited her, and threatened her into silence. In the end, my sister was arrested while listening to the one thing she had tried hardest to erase, her daughter's real voice. Several hours later, Grace told me Mark had begun asking about a deal before reaching the police station. He wanted to blame Vanessa and Calvin for everything. Vanessa refused to answer questions. She demanded a camera and insisted her followers would believe her once she told them what had happened. The police did not give her one. For the first time in years, Vanessa had no audience, no edited footage, and no child beside her to perform the story she had written. She had only the evidence and the words Emma had finally chosen for herself. The first thing Vanessa asked for after her arrest was a camera. She told the officers that millions of people were waiting to hear her side, and that one honest video would clear everything up. When they refused, she demanded her phone, then a public relations representative, then an attorney who understood media law. She did not ask whether Emma was safe. Mark behaved differently. Before he reached the police station, he began offering information in exchange for a lighter sentence. He blamed Vanessa for inventing Emma's condition, Calvin for building the replica of my home, and the documentary company for placing too much pressure on the family. According to Mark, he had only followed orders because he feared losing his marriage and his income. The investigators reminded him that he had programmed the false emergency story, installed the hidden camera, arranged the poisoned tea, and hired Calvin to enter my house if I survived. His attempt to portray himself as a frightened husband did not last long. Calvin agreed to cooperate after learning that Vanessa and Mark intended to make him responsible for everything. He provided access to the private servers, payment records, rehearsal footage, and messages showing that all three of them had participated in the plan. The evidence did not depend on one confession. The laboratory confirmed that the tea contained enough of the substance to cause a fatal heart rhythm disturbance in someone with my condition. Lower levels of the same substance were found in my blood and in the unopened supplement bottle recovered from my home. The hidden camera proved they intended to watch me after I drank it. The copied key and Calvin's equipment proved that someone was prepared to enter if the tea failed. The communication folders proved that Emma had been trained to delay calling for help and repeat a false account. The replica of my living room proved they were preparing content before the event even happened. Most damaging of all were Vanessa's own recordings. She had practiced announcing my death, rehearsed when to cry, and discussed how Emma's trauma could be used to postpone the independent assessment. For years, Vanessa had believed cameras gave her control over reality. In the end, her cameras documented the truth she wanted to hide. The criminal case took 11 months to reach court. During that time, Emma remained with me under a protective placement that later became permanent guardianship. Vanessa challenged the decision at every hearing. She claimed Emma belonged with her parents because only they understood her communication needs. She demanded that Emma be evaluated by doctors connected to the family channel and accused the Child Welfare Agency of punishing a successful mother for being visible online. Independent specialists reached a different conclusion. Emma had no physical condition preventing speech. She understood language at an advanced level for her age, but she showed signs of severe psychological trauma. Certain phrases caused her to freeze. Cameras made her anxious. Closed doors and the sound of keys could send her into panic. The specialists did not describe her as a child who had suddenly learned to speak. They described her as a child who had been trained not to. Emma was not required to sit in the courtroom and face her parents. Her earlier forensic interviews had been recorded according to legal standards, and the judge allowed her to answer additional questions from a protected
anything
room.
else in your
She
family's
chose to
possession
speak
with
for
one
part of her
sentence, anything
testimony
physical,
and
actually
type the
connected to
rest.
Lily Grandma's lawyer
Vanessa's
and
attorney
asked
tried
me
to
to
suggest
arrest him.
that I had
The
influenced
next
her.
morning, it wasn't my
Emma
lawyer
listened
who called.
carefully,
I called Sophia
then
Harris.
corrected him.
His voice
Aunt
had not
Natalie
called her
did
in
not
4
teach me what
months.
happened.
We need to talk.
She taught me I
Right
was
away.
allowed
She
to
always
tell it.
picked up when she
The
did not
attorney
recognize
asked whether
the
Emma
number. They
understood
had
that her
no
parents
idea
could go to
every
prison
single
because
thing
of
they
her
did in
words.
that hospice room.
Emma paused
I had
before
been watching
answering.
them the whole time.
They are not going to prison
My
because I
name is
spoke.
Lily Slater.
They are going because of what they did. I had never been prouder of her, but I did not tell her she had been brave in front of the cameras afterward. Too many adults had praised her only when she performed something useful for them. Instead, I asked whether she wanted lunch and whether she preferred to talk about the hearing or think about something else. She chose grilled cheese and a movie about a dog that became lost in a city. That was what healing often looked like. It was not a dramatic speech. It was a child being allowed to return to childhood after telling the truth. Mark accepted a plea agreement shortly before the trial ended. He testified against Vanessa and Calvin, but the judge rejected his claim that he had acted under pressure. He received a long prison sentence for attempted murder, conspiracy, child abuse, fraud, and evidence tampering. Calvin also received a prison sentence. His cooperation reduced it, but it did not erase the copied key, the hidden camera, the false recordings, or the plan to remove Emma if she spoke. Vanessa refused every agreement. She insisted the jury would understand that she had sacrificed everything for her daughter. She took the stand against her attorney's advice and described the family channel as an act of love. The prosecutor asked why a loving mother needed a replica of her sister's living room. Vanessa said it was part of a documentary. The prosecutor asked why the documentary included rehearsal footage of my death. Vanessa said creative projects sometimes explored possible emergencies. Then, the prosecutor played the recording in which Vanessa told Emma not to cry until the camera was ready. For the first time during the trial, my sister had no answer. She was convicted on every major charge. Her sentence ensured that Emma would be an adult long before Vanessa became eligible for release. When the judge asked whether she wanted to make a final statement, Vanessa did not apologize to me or Emma. She said the world had destroyed a mother for trying to provide for her child. The judge answered that providing for a child did not mean stealing her identity, controlling her speech, and using her as a shield for attempted murder. Vanessa was still arguing as officers led her away. The family channel collapsed before the sentencing hearing ended. Sponsors canceled their contracts. The documentary company released its records to investigators. The publisher withdrew Vanessa's memoir, and the platform removed several videos created through documented abuse. Money remaining in the business accounts was frozen for restitution, unpaid taxes, treatment expenses, and refunds to organizations that had donated under false claims. Some followers apologized. Others insisted Vanessa had been framed. A few accused Emma of destroying her own family. I stopped reading the comments. Emma had spent enough of her life being treated as public property. She did not need to watch strangers debate whether her pain was real. We moved to a smaller house in another town, where no one knew the location from old videos. Emma chose her own bedroom. She asked for pale green walls, open shelves, and a door that never locked from the outside. For the first few months, she slept with the light on. She hid food inside her pillowcase, because Vanessa used to remove meals when she broke the silence rules. She asked permission before speaking during dinner and apologized whenever she laughed too loudly. Each habit showed me how deeply fear had shaped her. I did not correct everything at once. I kept snacks where she could reach them. I knocked before entering her room. I allowed her to decide whether photographs were taken and who could see them. When she woke from nightmares, I sat nearby without demanding that she explain. She enrolled in school under strict privacy protections. On her first day, she spoke only to her teacher. By the end of the first month, She had made a friend named Zoe, who did not know anything about the channel. Zoe knew Emma liked drawing foxes, hated peas, and could remember every line from a book after hearing it twice. That was the kind of person Emma had always deserved to be. Not a symbol, not an inspiration, not the silent daughter from a carefully edited story, just Emma. One Saturday morning, almost 2 years after the cruise, I found her sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of warm cocoa. The television was off, no camera was recording. Rain tapped against the windows while she read the silver fox book that had once helped her practice speaking in secret. She closed it when I entered. "Can we have a quiet day?" she asked. "Of course." She hesitated. "Are you upset that I do not want to talk?" "No. You can talk when you want, and be quiet when you want." Emma smiled. "Mom used to say silence meant I was good. What does it mean now?" She thought for a moment. "It means I am resting." We spent the morning reading in separate chairs. Sometimes she asked me a question. Sometimes an hour passed without either of us speaking. The silence felt nothing like the silence Vanessa had created. It was not fear. It was not obedience. It was not a performance waiting for a camera to turn on. It belonged to Emma. My sister once believed she could control every story by deciding who was allowed to speak. She built a business around a child's silence, prepared my death as entertainment, and trusted that a witness without a public voice could never expose her. She was wrong. Emma did not save my life because someone gave her a voice. Her voice had always been there, hidden beneath years of threats, rehearsals, and lies. What saved me was the moment she decided that protecting someone she loved mattered more than obeying the people she feared. The first sentence she freely spoke to me was a warning. Years later, the sentence I remembered most was much quieter. "I am silent today because I choose to be." That was how I knew Vanessa had finally lost everything she had tried to control. Emma's words, Emma's silence, and Emma's life now belonged to Emma.